Hi, good afternoon. This is Greg Krasovsky, and this video is about Lisinopril and its dangers. Lisinopril is, I think, the #1 prescription drug in the U.S. It's prescribed to treat high blood pressure. Lisinopril is the generic name. Brand names are Zestril, Prinivil. The reason why my law office has been handling Lisinopril claims since, I guess, 2011 or 2012 is very straightforward. Lisinopril does cause severe and serious side effects and complications. Going back to the history of the drug, Lisinopril is one of ACE inhibitors, and this class of drugs was developed thanks to the research of a Brazilian scientist who noticed that people bitten by the Brazilian pit viper, I think the name of the pit viper is Jararaca or Jaranca, their blood pressure would drop. This was especially evident on plantations when plantation workers, most of whom were actually of African descent, would, after being bitten by a pit viper during their plantation work, would suffer a catastrophic loss or drop in blood pressure. Once research was done on the pit viper venom, it was discovered that it did have qualities of reducing high blood pressure. So then, since that synthetic derivatives were made from this pit viper venom, that created a class of blood pressure drugs called ACE inhibitors. But let's think about it. How prudent is it to treat blood pressure with a synthetic derivative of Brazilian pit viper snake venom? It's not a rattlesnake, but it's still a pit viper. Generally, when your body, now I'm not a physician, I'm an attorney, but this is what I know of medicine, and I think I do know enough. When your body ingests toxins, guess what filters them out? Your liver and your kidneys. That's just two primary organs that are responsible for filtering out toxins in your body. So if you ingest a man-made, potentially toxic substance like Lisinopril for valid purposes, for its intended purpose, you've been prescribed it to treat your high blood pressure, your liver and your kidneys will have to clear it out. People who are suffering from high blood pressure already have kidney issues. So you're having an extra load on your kidneys. Potential long-term use could lead to potential kidney injury, kidney damage. What's the worst type of kidney injury? Kidney failure. What's the worst type of liver injury and liver damage? Liver failure. If your kidneys fail, thank God you have two of them, but if both of them fail, it's dialysis time or an attempt to get a kidney transplant if you don't be on dialysis every week. And those of you who've known dialysis patients, you know what I'm talking about, how bad news it is. It's painful, it's uncomfortable. And clearing out your blood only twice a week, once a week, is not the optimal solution because the toxins are in there the rest of the time. Getting in a line for an organ transplant, like a liver transplant, well, unless you have some serious pull, if you're a billionaire or top politician, or you're willing to buy a liver on the black market somewhere overseas, I don't know. Doesn't look good. So when people contact my law offices with Lisinopril claims, the first question I ask them is, number one, when your physician prescribed Lisinopril to you, did he tell you that Lisinopril is a synthetic derivative of Brazilian pit viper snake venom, or at least that class of drugs? I haven't had a single patient, a single potential client or current client tell me that that was the case. The second question that I ask, are you African American? And the reason why that question is asked is statistics have shown that African Americans are disproportionately affected by a serious complication of Lisinopril, angioedema, which is swelling of mucous membranes. Once you contract angioedema, once you develop angioedema, you don't contract, you develop it. What happens is your lips start to swell. Lips are mucous membranes. The inside of your mouth, your tongue can swell to the size of a grapefruit. But what's worse is your breathing passages down your throat, also mucous membranes, they swell shut and you suffocate and you die. It's that severe, it's that deadly, it's that dangerous. And you know how people say, well, it's not going to happen overnight. It happens overnight. It can happen during the day. It happens to patients who've just been put on Lisinopril, and it can happen to patients who've been on Lisinopril for many years. But what does happen is that this angioedema disproportionately and predominantly affects those with African American heritage or African genes. How does that work? I don't know. But apparently people with African genes, or specifically African Americans, are more susceptible to angioedema. Some of the precursor signs are dry cough, itchy throat. Those seem to be fairly benign symptoms, right? You get a dry cough or an itchy throat. You would not even attribute it to a high blood pressure drug. Why would you think that a high blood pressure drug would cause your throat to itch or give you a dry cough? You wouldn't. So most patients don't even pick up on it and don't even mention it to the prescribing physician or their family physician, the primary doctor that they go to. So this may go overlooked and unnoted in your medical files. But the consequences of developing angioedema are severe. You're lucky if you make it to the emergency room, either on your own or by ambulance, if you're intubated in time, because often once the swelling is so bad, they can't even get a tube in. Intubation fails. We've had cases where loved ones have called us where their relatives, their family members have died in the emergency department, unfortunately. Even though they walked in on their own and they were waiting to see someone, and the angioedema developed so quickly that when a code was called, they came over with a crash cart. They weren't able to save the patient because they just couldn't get a tube in on time. You literally have to do immediate surgery to cut a hole in the throat and try to get something inside the trachea, which is a surgical procedure. Most people may not be able or realize that that's what needs to be done, and that may not be effective. Things are swelled shut so badly, and a person is without oxygen for minutes before that decision is made. So, if you or your loved one have suffered complications from Lisinopril, please contact my law office. Let's see what we can do for you. Apologize, got a bit of a cold. But one thing you do have to keep in mind, angioedema is already on the Lisinopril warning label. So what this means is you're not going to be able to sue the drug manufacturer for it. Once you've been put on notice by the drug manufacturer on the warning label of particular side effects, the drug manufacturer does not have liability because you've been properly warned, even though your physician may have never mentioned it to you. And this is something else we need to get to as well. Under the Hippocratic Oath, an oath that all physicians take, and under the generally accepted standards of care, physicians are supposed to obtain their patients' fully informed consent before rendering any treatment, including drug treatment. What does that mean when you prescribe a drug to a patient? That means you should take out a warning label to the drug, right? You're a physician, you can print it out of your office. You may already have it laying around since all the drug company sales reps come over, right? And give you samples and say, Jim, this is the drug I'd like you to prescribe. It's Lisinopril. By the way, here are the potential side effects. Just highlight them. And by the way, it's a synthetic derivative of Brazilian pit viper snake venom. Would you like to take it for high blood pressure? Oh, by the way, if you're African American, please keep in mind that you may develop angioedema that could kill you, and this angioedema disproportionately and predominantly affects African Americans. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Physicians are not taking the time to take out a drug label and to show their patients all the potential complications. And I think they're failing their patients for that. That may even constitute medical malpractice, but right, who am I to judge? This is for judge and jury to decide. So you may have a potential medical malpractice claim. But getting back to how we work potential lisinopril claims. If you've come down with angioedema, if you've come down with injuries to your liver, injuries to your kidney, other serious side effects, let me just go through the list got in front of me. Whoa. And usually, when you look at the warning label, they list fairly benign, fairly mild side effects: headache, cough, dry mouth, constipation, well, fainting, low energy. I mean, you could get these things from having high blood pressure anyway, right? Taste impairment, gas, diarrhea, generalized weakness. But remember, once you start displaying any of these side effects, once you start suffering from them, you should talk to your physician. You should put him or her on notice that this is what you're experiencing, and the physician's job is to order all the necessary diagnostics, whether it's blood tests for your heart and electrocardiogram, other tests that are required, and also look at the other drugs that you're taking. If you're taking a combination of prescription drugs, and then think about whether your drug treatment should be modified. And if you're taking lisinopril, well, hopefully your physician understands why lisinopril is a potentially dangerous drug, right? Here are some of the other side effects that are listed for lisinopril. They're considered rare side effects. Diabetes, but we often see that with people who are overweight and who have high blood pressure. Gout, low amount of sodium in the blood, decreased bone marrow function, low blood platelet count, white blood cell count, low white blood cell count, blockage of the bile duct from your liver, things like that, abnormal liver function tests. So, you're already homing in on some of these things. But what I also hear from patients over these last 10, 12 years is people are complaining of joint pain, not just gout, but overall weakness. Other medical conditions are exacerbated, are getting worse, right? Psoriasis, and some of these things are often caused where your body is fighting increased toxins. But let's see what we can do for you. For lisinopril, like I've said, angioedema, we're not going to be able to sue the drug manufacturer. The other thing you have to keep in mind is most of you have taken lisinopril, the generic, not the brand name drug, Zestril or Prinivil. You can only sue drug manufacturers if you take the brand name drug, because it's the brand name label, right, that the FDA had approved for the brand name manufacturer at the time. But you may have a medical malpractice claim if your doctors never fully warned you, if they overlooked conditions that you had that should have counterindicated you being prescribed lisinopril. If while taking lisinopril you started exhibiting some of these things and they were noted in your medical file, or they became apparent from test results that your physician received, and your doctor didn't put two and two together and kept you on lisinopril, or didn't reduce the dosage, whatever, you may have claimed for medical malpractice, for failure to properly monitor you after having lisinopril prescribed to, or failure to properly explain the potential dangers of a drug. For that, we need to review your medical records. So get your medical records from the physician that prescribed lisinopril to you. Get your medical records from anyone who treated any of these side effects. Also get your pharmacy printouts, your health insurance records, and we can look through those things and see whether there is a smoking gun that could give you a viable medical claim. If we have a viable claim for medical malpractice or product liability in the event, drug manufacturing, so we handle those nationwide with local co-counsel in the state that you're in, or in the state where the physician is located, who would be the defendant in this case. But the first thing is gather all your stuff so we can go through your medical records. That's about it. I know we had a Lisinopril video before, and for some mysterious reasons, the audio disappeared. And then the video disappeared itself. So I hope it doesn't happen with this one, because it's an extremely popular drug, a drug that can cause serious problems potentially. So if you know someone who's on Lisinopril, make sure they take the time to go through the warning label once they pick up their prescription. It's given to you by the pharmacist. Make sure they can discuss with their physician all the potential negative side effects and whether there's safer options to control their blood pressure. And if they're not getting the answers that they need, or they're suffering from some of the side effects that I mentioned, then have them reach out to my office and we'll see whether we can get them compensation from a viable claim. All right, either for medical malpractice or product liability. Thank you and good luck to you. Stay healthy and stay safe.